Hey everyone, hi Twitch, hi everybody in the audience. I'm Dennis, and you are?
We just met, Nikhil.
Nikhil. This guy's crazy. And welcome to the AWS Mobile Q&A. So we're just gonna, we have the audience here we've had all day, and hopefully some folks are online, and we're just here to answer questions, because sometimes you just have that heated question you want to ask, and ask away. And then we have Adrian online and a few other moderators online as well to take your questions. And if we don't have any questions for maybe 32 seconds, then we'll shut off the feed and get out of here. So
You said 30.
32. Oh, 37 seconds.
Right.
So, and I'll kind of keep an eye out on the list. So, any questions in the audience? Yes. So the question was, how do we see mobile development transform in the next year with AWS? And that's a good question. We are focusing on, customer feedback is the number one. Like Nikhil was talking about, is a good percentage of our users are providing feedback, and then we base on that. And, of course, there's a cycle through that. But the rest of the year, we're focusing on that application developer, that front end for the CLI, and be able to allow you to quickly build an application in your own environment and deploy those resources based on that category of push notifications, messaging, auth, all those type of categories that allow you to quickly get up and build out. And we'll kind of build upon that and allow us to build more applications, the modern apps, the IoT pieces, as well as improve on the CLI. Again, the open source community is involved, and so if you have any questions, suggestions, or issues, feel free to address them with the GitHub repo. So it's a very popular community-driven application. So that's kind of our focus right now. Anything with testing or devices?
No, so yes, for testing, just in general app development too. I just want to add a few points. There's so many trends that going on. Machine learning is one. Analytics. How do you do that? Sign-in is one. So if you look at any problem with app or the trends that are going on in the industry, there are fundamental blocks, right? Like, where is sign-in going on? You see a lot of trend like, just a text code is being sent, and then that becomes your password in a lot of places in the new approach. So I think AWS is well positioned, and we are addressing, if you just see the offering, some of the things that Dennis did, like how do you monetize your ads, say for example, the machine learning one. Cognito, how do you leverage that? AppSync, how do you do offline data? So I think AWS's mobile in general is pretty well positioned to address these other, few fundamental blocks. As far as testing is going, there are a lot of new frameworks coming out, a lot of new types, like, React Native. Like, what's the testing framework I use for that? It's a pure web application. Is the trend going away from native? We see these industry signals which says, is it going to be pure React Native? Are people moving away from, native or no? So there's a mix. It's not just one trend. We see a mix. And I think we have solutions or services to tackle each of those individual offerings. That's what I wanted to add.
Yeah, that's a good point about the machine learning piece. And like I said, we talked about in the slides, almost every slide was AWS Cloud has everything you need, right? All the services available to you, but it's about, compressing that in and getting it pinpointed to some of those category based. So hopefully we'll see some more machine learning features out there, so we'll be able to easily build those machine learning without the knowledge of Python and running through those models, and hopefully it'll be a lot easier for you to deploy that and secure, just sort of what we did with AR, VR recently with Amplify.
Yeah.
Anything else? Oh, question to Dennis from Victor. We discussed the issue yesterday. We discussed the problem of streaming video audio from S3 through pre-signed URLs, slow and lags. I'm wondering if that's a chance to check out. Yeah, so Victor, is Victor on the? So Victor was talking about the pre-signed URL. So a typical example would be like if you have a mobile app and you have videos that you're selling to users, let's say, and you have your videos on S3. Typically what you do is have your user authenticate, or you would sell, do an in-app purchase or do some kind of subscription, and then you would give that user pre-signed URL to those individual objects within S3. So that way, not anybody could just get to the S3 bucket. So those are users, and that expires, in 24 hours, 48 hours, months, whatever it might be, depending on what they subscribe to. And what the customer's talking about is the lag between, like, if I went directly to a anonymous or a public object within S3 and I stream it, a video or audio, it's much faster than if I try to do a pre-signed URL and stream that audio video. And I'll actually bring that back to the team. It's not related to what we're doing, but I'll talk to the S3 because it might be either S3 or the sign piece with CloudFront. So that you can either front it with CloudFront, which is the nice caching endpoint, and then you could also pre-sign a URL on the front of CloudFront, which goes back and pulls those objects back from S3. So there's a couple options. You go directly to S3 or directly to CloudFront, and then both ways you can actually sign it. And that's a way of secure access to that for that user for those objects. And those could be videos or audios. So we'll take a look at that because I haven't had that feedback before, but that's definitely a concern is maybe there's a way around that, or if there's some kind of overhead, or there's a better way to do it. Maybe you do on the bucket itself or the individual objects. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think, yeah.
But thanks for the question, Victor, and I'll take that back to the team. And then there's some questions about ECS, which we won't discuss. Any other issues before you guys go? So they're online sending links to streaming audio and video from CloudFront. We talked about CloudFront a little bit, but that's part of the streaming objects. If you're a global application and you want to cache those objects, you would put all your S3 bucket in front of or behind CloudFront, and then it would stream. So those users will have low latency and less hops from their location, so into different regions where they're accessing those, so they don't have to go all the way to the bucket. So it won't really matter where your bucket is located or where those objects are stored, as CloudFront will cache those edge points. So wherever they are, they'll connect directly to the edge point and pull those objects back. All right, we'll wait 30 more seconds.
What's with the 30 seconds?
I don't know, 33. How about 33
it's like
seconds?
TCP reset 30 seconds.
Yeah. Yeah, anything we should add? So reInvent coming up at the end of November.
Yeah.
After Thanksgiving weekend. It's the whole week where we have thousands of AWS customers come out and we train them, and we learn from those customers and get more feedback and figure out a roadmap for the year. So it's a great opportunity if you want to come out and learn. There's a lot of workshops. There's a lot of training opportunities, and then interacting with your peers too. There's a ton of opportunities like pub crawls and buffalo wing eating contest and everything else. It's quite the crazy, but a lot of learning and a lot of meetups and interaction.
Anyone here going to reInvent in the room? Jane, come on. Maybe.
Oh, we got a question here. How much does it cost for a new device in Device Farm?
All right. So how much does it cost for a new device in Device Farm? So there are two offerings. There's the public offering, and then there's the private offering. So public offering is you see a list of devices in Device Farm, and those are shared devices. So essentially customer A comes in, runs their tests, Device Farm cleans up that instance, and then customer B gets that instance. Now, there will be multiple instances of each one of this device type behind the scene. So the cost of using that public fleet of devices is two models, is either pay as you go, so you pay by the minute, and then the second model is you do slot subscription. So essentially you say, let's say you have 5 slots. So that means that at any given point, if you selected, let's say 50 devices, you'll go through 5 devices at a time. So it depends on, how much do you want to use. Typically what we see is there's a sweet spot that if you're over a certain amount of minutes, like say per month, then it makes more financial sense to go with the slots. Like say you have CI/CD, you don't really know. You're going to keep on running tests, and if one of the tests hangs, like you don't want to be charged metered or by the minute, right? So those are the two options in public devices. Private devices It depends on the device type. So let's say it's a latest device, so the retail cost of the device might be higher as compared to the, some device that's 2 years older. But it will fall in the, typically it starts at $200 and it goes up to max $500 per month. But then private devices do have a lot of flexibility, dedicated devices, and then VPC access. You can skip app re-signing, as I was mentioning, do team management with those, configure the runtime behavior of those. You can't do that with public so much. I mean, public are still good for a majority of automation cases, but we always get customers who have some specialized case. Hey, I want to run this command before something goes. Private devices is a good fit for those kind of cases. So. Yeah, it really depends. Like, if you had a specific list of devices, what we recommend is reach out to us. So at AWS Device Farm, AWS-Device Farm-support, or on the Twitter handle, either ways, and we can get in touch with you and provide you the quote for those list of devices. So if you said, well, I need 5 of iPhone 10s, 5 of Nexus, or 5 of some other device, we can get you a quote for that. That's how the pricing for private device works. But we really need to know the exact list of devices for private. Public, it's all the same. We really don't differentiate between a 5-year-old device or like the latest one. They're all going to be charged either in the pay-as-you-go or the slot model.
So it costs the same as like if I want to test an iPhone XS.
No.
Versus an iPhone 5, it's going to cost me the same
well,
for the public. That's cool. Because I don't want to pay $1,000 for an iPhone XS.
But it's your phone. It's your personal phone. You can do, you can have your private certificates on it.
That's the private one, but the public one.
But the public one, yeah.
Yeah, it's the same price.
It's the same price.
And so it doesn't matter whether it's like the larger, newest one versus like,
yep.
It's not going to cost any more than a Galaxy Note.
Yeah, it's
which
not.
is less of a device. Oh, sorry.
You're biased towards iOS.
I am biased.
All right. Does that? Yeah, please. Yeah. Yeah. Got it. So the question is, how do we determine which device is more popular, and how do we appropriately then have the scale? So as by default, if you just take a look at the list of devices, we try to cover a large portion of the U.S. market for sure. So if there's a device released by one of the leading manufacturers, we will most likely have that device, right? Now, what we do is, I said earlier, we take 3 factors into consideration. What device is a customer asking for? Sometimes customers just tell us, like, hey, I'm running an execution test suite for my enterprise org. These are the devices we have analyzed, or we want, because this is what we see as the main share. So that's data point number 1. Number 2, there's industry published data, which if you just go to Apple's website and say what's the OS distribution, then there's plenty other links just saying which is the most popular iOS device. Like, is iPhone 7? So like what we saw a few months ago was like iPhone 7 sat in the sweet spot, or even iPhone 6s. So it wasn't like iPhone 10 was the most popular at that point when we looked at it. It's iPhone 6 because it can go lower iOS version and even higher iOS version at that point. So we look at that data, number 2. And when we actually see what devices are being used, because if a customer is running a test, what they run on actually gives us an indication on what the general trend is going. Are they testing for the latest and greatest, or are they testing for some older version? So a combination of these factors, we take into account and then say, okay, we definitely should have more of this device type, or our top pool should have these devices. Does that answer the question?
Yes, and one more so.
Sure.
You mentioned that it's primarily based on U.S. data, right? So,
Yeah.
you also have like regional, not U.S. but like
Yeah.
U.S., Europe, Asia.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So.
it's
Correct. So the follow-up question is, do we only do U.S. or other? So, I should elaborate. So I said primarily majority devices that you see cover, almost majority of the U.S. market, like more than 80-90% of the U.S. market. But we do have international devices from different regions. It really depends on what customers tell us. They could come to us and say, hey, I'm in the Europe region or in the Southeast Asia region, and these devices are really popular there. Is there any chance that we can have those because we don't see it in your list? So we do take those customer requests. We'll go in and see, can we procure those devices? Then we also make sure that we can run validations on those devices and actually support them as we claim. Because sometimes you see some, for example, a international device in some region could have like really complex settings or extra hardware features like ambient light sensors and all those other things. And what we saw with, as just an example, when we plugged it in and everything runs, but it has specialized hardware, that doesn't work as the same way as other devices. So what we do is we need a validation step. So once we say, yes, this does run perfectly in our stack, we support that device. And obviously, private devices, we don't put any restriction. If we can get a hand on the device, if we can procure it, we'll support it. Yeah, cool.
Just waiting for some more.
Okay. You didn't say 30 seconds again. I've gotten used to it now. It's like every time, yeah, 30 seconds. As soon as I finish saying it's 30 seconds. Nope.
Well, if anybody doesn't have any questions, let's close out and head out.
All right.
Thanks,
Let
everyone.
them go. All right.